to the audience. So Arnaud is asking, what is the minimum market size for a seed round? So I assume it's the overall market size. Um, and he's asking 100 million. So 100 million feels really low. If the entire market you're going after is worth 100 million, it feels that whatever you're building is more of a lifestyle business. I mean, you're not going to be building $1 billion company in a $100 million category. Yeah, if the category is 100 million today, but there's a compelling story for why it could be multiple billion with the product you're bringing, and because of general trends, that could be okay. Let me give you an example. We invested in a company called Rebag. It's a handbag marketplace, and the used handbag market at the luxury level was a tiny market. You went to eBay and you ended up all the like bags worth over 1,000 were selling. It was maximum a couple hundred million, but because mostly people were afraid of fraud. They're afraid that they're buying a fake Birkin or a fake Chanel or Gucci, etc. And so people were, when we met VCs in the early days, were always like, "Is this market big enough?" And so we used proxies, and we're like, "Well, let's look at other markets. Let's look at the car market. In the car market, there's 15 to 17 million new cars being bought every year in the U.S., and there's 40 million used cars. It's 3 to 1. Now, in the handbag market, we have 5 billion a year of new handbags sold every year, but only a couple hundred million in the used market. Does that really make sense? And so then we started looking at, if we changed it, could it look more like the car market? And we thought the answer was yes. And then we started looking at how much inventory is in people's closets. So if you take all of the sales of handbags from the last decade or 20 years, how much value is there? And they were like, okay, maybe the market is small today, but it could be compelling that it's large enough that you can actually build a business here. And as the company has grown to over 100 million in revenues, those caveats and worries that people had in the early days have gone away. But you can get there. But in general, I would not go after a market that's only 100 million because it's too small. It's not bad, right? Like if you're building a mom and pop company, but I wouldn't go and try to raise venture money in order to go for that, because venture outcomes, people, the VCs, they want 10x in their investment because there's so many of them that are going to die. And so they need to believe your valuation can go 10x from whatever, 5 million, 10 million, 20 million, whatever valuation they invest in. So a bigger market, which frankly, 5 billion overall sales for the category is probably on the low end, is probably required.
I think the one caveat that we've made at FJ, right, is if there are winner takes all dynamics, we may be willing to consider a lower market TAM. So $1 billion, but it's going to be at least $1 billion.
Yeah.
But if you're in a world where you think you can own the whole market, that's compelling, and that can be $1 billion business.
Yeah,
but
because usually when you win, likely, you can then go to a different category. So in fact, I would, in general, would prefer smaller market. So to be clear, it needs to be big enough, but then we prefer smaller markets than larger markets. You know, the travel market is infinitely competitive. I'd rather, it's the red ocean versus a blue ocean. We want to be in places that are not too competitive. So we're in TCG Player. It's a Magic the Gathering marketplace. And it feels really niche, but that's already a multi-$100 million company in a multi-billion dollar category. And they've expanded from that to Pokemon. And so you can actually, smaller market's better, but it has to be big enough. Yeah, I know. Totally agree with you, Kelly.